Welcome to this week's Authors Love Readers podcast, where we delve into the stories behind the stories. We're asking authors questions, some of them fun, some of them serious, and from their answers, you're going to learn things you never knew about the people who write the stories you love. My name is Patricia McLinn. I'm your host and designated question asker.
I'm Mary Buckham, and I'm an author who loves readers.
Now, let's start the show. Hi, and welcome to another week's edition of Authors Love Readers podcast. Our guest this week is Mary Buckham. And this is somebody, a lot of times, Mary, I end up saying mumble years that I've known somebody. It's not quite as long with you. But I know Mary from a book discussion group that's all authors, and a few other people have been on who've talked about books with us. And she is extremely insightful. And we were really sorry to lose her because she didn't want to play with us as much anymore because she wanted to work. Is that awful or what?
The truth
How's that for an introduction, Mary?
Mary is an awful person, but she was fun to play in the sandbox when she played there.
She was an awful person to deny us playtime. So tell us a little bit about what you write.
The way I describe what I write is I write everything except to my mother, and she will complain about that quite often. I started out in the romance, but quickly evolved into romantic suspense because, good Lord, you could blow things up. Moved from there into young adult because you could blow even more things up. And also write in nonfiction, helping writers learn how to write, because I find the process of writing and being a writer so fascinating that it gives both sides of my brain exercise room.
Before we started recording, I warned Mary that I was going to jump around. So here I go. Do you find that writers are different from, and I'm giving away my view on this, from what I tend to think of as civilians? And if so, how?
To me, it is more, we are all, whether we're civilian or writers, we're all hardwired into story. It is comes when we ask about where we come from. It comes in how our news is given to us on a daily basis. It is we are literally understand and respond to story. The difference between what you call writers and civilians is that when you are simply a reader, and that there's no simply about that anymore, but when you are predominantly a reader, there's a mystery about writing. There's a veil over it. And when you start writing, learning how to write, which we all did, those of us who are writers, we have to learn to pull back that veil and start seeing the mechanics of what makes a story. How does it doesn't happen by accident. And that can be very problematic for a lot of us because we like the mystery. We like the, oh my God, how does this really happen? And when you don't necessarily have the strong writer gene, that strong need to tell stories, then you get to one end of a continuum of readers. That there are readers who want to be writers. There are readers who enjoy simply being readers. And then there are the readers who might not understand why writers write or think of it in a kind of the way that we portray it on TV and movies, that it is self-indulgent or only for people who are very dramatic or people who have a need for an addiction. It's very self-serving. And the reality is there's a huge range of writers and why they write. And I find it fascinating being on both sides of that.
One of the things number of us have talked about over the 30, 40 episodes that I've done is that when you start writing, as you said, you pull back the veil and you see the mechanics. And some of the reading loses its magic. Have you ever found or can you recommend a way to get the magic back? Or do you think that's necessary? And if so, is that a warning to people who love reading that they should think very, very long about whether they want to write or not?
Well, I think part of the reason the magic can go away when you start writing is that you get so focused on how to make this story work. And you're cut into that reading for pleasure time that you have. I feel that I'm very, very fortunate because as a nonfiction writer, I am always pushing that envelope of what I am reading. So I do not read simply one genre or one type of story. All of us have our favorites. And what happens to most individuals who become writers is their favorites become smaller and smaller that they read because their time becomes more limited. So to me, to bring back the excitement of story, if you are able to, and that's why I loved the book reading discussion group we were in, because it in many ways forced me to pick up some books that I would have never chosen myself, but it allowed me to re-engage with that excitement about story. And I think that's vital for us as writers. Unfortunately, what happens is too many of us, let's say we're writing romantic suspense, then we are only reading romantic suspense, and then it becomes a busman's holiday, where we're only seeing the same type of writing, the same type of expectations for the readers. We're not really challenging ourselves as a reader or challenging ourselves as a writer.
So, how can you trace back when you got hooked on stories? Can you can you see a childhood book, or was it later?
I was very fortunate that I grew up in a storytelling family. They were not writers, they were amazing storytellers. They were French Canadian, they were German, and they would tell stories. And I was fascinated why this person you would want to listen to them, even if they were talking about a grocery list, because they made it so entertaining with their inflection of their voice and what they focused on. And even as a young child, I was roping my siblings and the neighborhood kids into putting on plays, I had pretend friends because I could direct them easier than I could direct my siblings. So story has always been a part of my life in a very positive way, but I never thought I was a writer. I grew up in a family of creatives who were visual creatives. So I was the one that my family felt really bad for because I was not creative. All I could do was write. And it took until I got married to realize, oh, this may be creativity too.
Oh my goodness. So you were writing all along, though? You started writing very early?
I wrote, but I only wrote for the sake of what others wanted and needed. So I would do homework. I would do resumes. I would do things that others needed, predominantly nonfiction as opposed to fiction, because stories, it was just not valued. My family were not readers.
And that's so interesting if they told stories so well that they weren't.
Exactly. But it was just, to them, it was telling a story, which was like telling a joke. It wasn't a skill. It wasn't a craft. It wasn't an ability. It was just, this is your Grandpa Frank, or this is your dad. And no one valued it. No one placed a value on it. So, and the fact that everyone was so bloody talented with visual arts, and one ran a museum and one had an art gallery. And I mean, they were amazing. And I couldn't draw a stick figure to save my life.
Me either. I can't draw a straight line with a ruler. It's just
the ruler is used to beat the paper afterwards.
That might work. Okay, I'm gonna skip around. I have a feeling we may come back to this at some point, but let's hit you with some easy ones. Let's say, what's your favorite color and why? And has it changed over your life?
It has changed. Um, when I was growing up, blue was my favorite color. And I think it was because of the role I had in my family. I was the second child, and my job in many ways was the peacekeeper. I was the
Mm.
first daughter, and blue was calming, soothing, make it work for everyone. What I have found and am fascinating is that as I grow older, my colors have become yellow and red.
Ooh.
And not just any kind of red, but like mandarin red, strong yellows. I painted a living room once in all this bright yellow and loved it. And my teenage son came in and said, well, that means none of my friends will be coming over because it was too outlandish. And I said, yay, score me. Not the nurturing mother.
I had a room that I once painted, and a friend walked into it and said, "It's like being on the inside of a kumquat." 'Cause it was an orangey yellow, and I was like, "Yeah, that's great."
Yeah, exactly. But to me, those intense colors fire our creativity and they give us energy. And they also, as women, they give us permission to be or to get what we want around us.
Hmm.
To me, going into beige rooms makes me itch because they are so neutral and boring. Other people need them. But there's a whole psychology of color and understanding, like there is of stone, as there are of scents. All of it has meanings. And I find it fascinating that give me a bright yellow, give me a strong red, strong, powerful red now. And I see that as a growth.
Now, going back to those days, though, did you have music that meant, or songs that meant a lot to you?
Not really. And the reason being is I loved being in my own head. I had so much going on in my own head that songs that did not tell stories made no sense. So they were jarring to me. And going through high school, and for a number of years, 20, 30, 40 years, songs have not been stories.
Mm.
There are exceptions to that, of course, but they'd be like snatches of stories. So it's kind of like MTV. When a song is a little this, a little that, a little this, a little that, go back to the refrain. I found it was like somebody sitting on my shoulder tapping me, and I didn't want that intrusion. So I didn't listen to music in that way. And it's funny because my husband loves music, and he can quote all sorts of song lines, etc. And to me, it's a big blank.
That is interesting. And I've found some songs have started stories for me because they are incomplete, because they're a snapshot. And from that snapshot, then I can play backward and forward of what brought them there, what happened after. So I have two or three books that I can pin to certain songs that this started. Tend to be country western.
Yes, country western of anything does a great job of that. That's if there are any songwriters, I think Dixie Chicks I love because of that ability for them to really hone in on a story, but the emotion of the story, and give you just enough without giving you everything.
So I'm going to skip to a question here because I'm curious about your reactions to story. I have this bizarre little desert island. You're going to be stuck on it. You have no say.
Is that kind of like I'm really pushed out of the sandbox? You're sending me to the
But
island?
it doesn't stand because it's a desert island. So
Oh,
You have
okay.
your own sand.
More sand.
And it allows you to play a movie, but only 3 movies. So you'll have to watch these 3 movies over and over and over. Which 3 movies are you gonna pick?
That is a hard question, isn't it? I think I would pick Miss Congeniality
Mm.
because it has humor, but it also has a woman who is fighting to be herself and put way outside her comfort zone. And it's not a comfort zone a lot of people would consider as this is hard, but for that particular character, it is. Plus, there's the dynamics of change with her and also the other people involved. So that would be one, Miss Congeniality. Mystery Alaska.
Hmm.
And that's a little sleeper of a movie that is about connections, but also about transition.
You could say the same about Miss
Yeah,
Congeniality.
you could. I think the third would probably be Chocolat. And
Oh.
again, it's the same type of characters that I like to write about, which are taken out of context, put into new context, finding their way, learning to release what they should be doing to do what they want to do and need to do.
In Chocolat, I think of the protagonist. I guess I'm even more interested in how she sparks change in other people more. So I almost see the village changing more than her. Does that make sense?
It does. And yet she's very secure in so many ways with herself. But it is only near the end of the story that we realize that she has been carrying a huge burden. She has been carrying the expectations of her mother
Mm.
her whole life. So anticipating that she would uproot herself and her child, and it's worked for her up to this point. But now suddenly it is no longer working. So she realizes that her child is not happy with the changes that she's been going through. And the child is willing to speak basically truth to power. But she does it from a child's way of doing it, which is throwing a fit. But the protagonist accepts that that may have been her mother's way and it may have been the traditional way, but it will no longer serve her. She has come to belong in this village in ways that she never anticipated. It's one thing to go in and know that you're going to leave
Uh,
shortly because it gives you a certain
uh-huh.
freedom. That's the way I went to college, is I chose a different college every year for 4 years. So I knew I only had 9 months in a location. So what I needed and wanted to do during that time was kind of, I did not have that freedom of saying, I will get to it someday, because I already had my exit strategy. And it was lonely in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, but it was also, I don't have to get trapped into these routines. I'm not going to let things slide because I knew I would be walking away shortly.
Did you find that you wanted to go back to one, or were you absolutely determined to only go a year at each school?
I was determined to only go a year at each school. Now, some of the schools that I anticipated going to did not work out, so I had to make changes. First year, I went to Seattle, which was about 300 miles away from where I grew up. So it was far away, but I could basically drive home in a day. Second year, I went to University of Hawaii. Yeah, and you
No,
can't drive home from Hawaii.
not when you grew up on the
But it had
mainland.
the
No.
Oriental, yeah, it had the Oriental culture. So it was immersing myself in a different mindset, a different approach to life. And at the end of that, I came back to Washington State and for the summer to work. I thought I would be going to France for the third year, but that was not working out because of the
Mm.
language requirements. So I ended up going to Italy for a year and going to study there. But I knew where I wanted to graduate from. So everything I did along the way was to make sure that all the credits and everything could flow to this final place. So I knew that I could graduate in 4 years. This was not my just playing around. It was so that I had a bigger experience of college than just going someplace and staying for 4 years. That to me was kind of restraining.
That's a really interesting approach. I was at the same school for 4 years, but got my undergrad degree in 3 years, and then the 4th year was a master's. But I always yeah,
Overachiever.
my mother in particular said we'd pay for 4 years. Gotta figure you'd find a way to get 2 degrees out of it. But what it really was not knowing what I wanted to do. And so I finally, in my junior year, decided journalism. Well, I really wanted to write novels, but that didn't seem particularly practical. So I decided I'd go into journalism, this detour of practicality. And at that point, I could either get an undergrad degree, switch majors and get the undergrad degree in 4 years, or I went back and figured out what courses I'd taken, and the courses I'd taken would get me to what degree fastest. So I ended up petitioning to graduate the same day I declared my major, which made them a little cranky. And my undergraduate degree is in English composition. And I am here to tell you there has never been a want ad looking for an English composition major.
I was going to say.
Yep. But one of the
I love
things,
it.
and staying there, I went to Northwestern, staying there for the master's in the 4th year. Part of it is I didn't want to miss out on things, And at that point, you've been going to the school, you know people, you know the things that are coming up. You want, at one point, I considered maybe taking a year to go abroad, and again, I thought I couldn't have done the 2 degrees in 4 years if I'd done that. But also, I thought I'd miss all this stuff. I know what's coming up. I want to do it. And to me, it's sort of like, celebrating the different seasons, and you know what's coming up. And if you left for 6 months, you'd miss all that. So,
Yeah, and to me, it was just the opposite. Knowing what was coming up is been there, done that. I might even have the T-shirt, but what's around the next corner? So, and part of it might have been is I always planned to be a nun. So I knew that was going to be at the end, is I was going to go and be a nun. I'd known that since 2nd grade. And that plan, and I was going to an order of contemplatives, which means the nuns that basically isolate themselves into a convent and mostly into a room for the rest of their lives. And I knew that, looking forward to it. And so it was like I was cramming my life into a smaller, I want to see what's out here so that I know that when I make this choice, it was the right choice. And I felt that was going around the next corner always helped say, okay, I love this. This was really good. Never expected that. The good, the bad, the ugly. And it all helped me get clear about my decision.
So when did you decide not to become a nun? Or did you become a nun and leave? Is this too nosy?
No. I was basically the 3rd year in Italy, I met the guy who would be my future husband. We didn't date. We didn't see each other, anything that year. But the following year, when I was across the country in Washington, D.C., and he was in Washington State, I don't know how we did it because he didn't have a phone and he didn't write letters. I think I wrote him a couple letters, but I would come home on breaks and that type of thing and see, because he was in my awareness. He asked me to marry him, and I said no because I was going to be a nun. That's how,
Yeah.
I like you. So he decided the way I was going to be a nun was to meet up with a friend in Pennsylvania. We were going to go to England, and I was going to walk my way to Japan, where the nunnery was. So he left his job to drive me from Washington State to New York, to Pennsylvania, to New York City to catch the plane to go off. And it took until literally that last day that I realized I wanted him in my life. I wanted him in my life more than I wanted the gift of being able to be in my own head for the rest of my life, which only later did I discover that meant I wanted to get to my stories. That my mom ruined it for me.
How did your mom ruin it for you?
She said, if you want to be a nun, I understand. But just be aware, the priest will always be in charge of you.
Ooh.
Yeah, right there. Thanks, Mom. Yeah, because we'd known some doozies of priests. And it was like, they weren't smarter. They weren't holier. They weren't necessarily better than the nuns that they worked side by side, but they got the authority and the nuns did not.
I will tell you, I went to public schools, but went to CCD, which is like Sunday school for Catholics, but on Saturday, Catholics who go to public school. And I think I was in third grade, and I had Sister Mary Robert, and she was young and very energetic, and she was really good. I told her I wanted to be a nun. She said, I will never forget this. She said, "You do, and I'm leaving." I'm this little third grade kid. And she said, "I've never seen anybody with less vocation." And sure enough, like the next year, I had a lay teacher, and I don't know how it came up, but I said I'd read The Count of Monte Cristo. And she said, it was an older lady, and she said I was going to go to hell because it was written by an atheist. And I thought about it for a little bit, and I said, well, if I'm going to go to hell, and it's kind of already a done deal, I get to break all the rules. And I thought that
just threw open the gate.
Perfect sense. So she went and got the priest, who in this instance, looking back, did a very good job, where he said it didn't work that way. And I had to be tolerant and understanding of somebody who came from a different generation, and that things changed. And then he went and called my mother, who said, "No, you don't get to break all the rules."
See, my mother would have said, "Great, I'll join you."
No, Dad might have, but not Mom. Yeah. So that's fascinating, Mary. And after that, it seems like such a letdown to ask you if you've had any interesting or odd jobs, because you already kind of did beforehand.
I just had the odd life. I think it sounds like a normal job. After I came back from Italy and went to school in Washington, D.C., I took a job as a file clerk in a law firm because I could come in at night and work at night and go to classes during the day. And the attorney I worked for was a big name, and he had clients like the country of Peru, John Dean, all the Nixon guys.
Oh, wow.
He was a big thing. He was also Italian. And one of the events that happened was, and Gloria Steinman dated the other lawyer in the firm there. It was just a very fascinating place. But he had a meeting after hours at the law office with one of his clients. And he asked me if I would stay so I could get them papers and serve them coffee and all that kind of stuff. And so I walked into this meeting and was passing the papers, and they were speaking Italian back and forth. And they were asking, the man who came in, the client, said, "Does she speak Italian?" Well, yes, I did. But
Uh-huh. They didn't know that?
they didn't know that. And it was not a good time to tell them because they had already been talking.
Oh.
And it was like, it was a big mafioso figure. And
Wow.
he was probably one of the soulless people I've ever met. You know, when you just look at somebody and there's no humanity there. So it was, you know, mentally, I kept thinking this would be a great thing in a story one day. But so
And
it wasn't.
have you used it in a story?
In some ways, I used it to help with the series of stories that became what the Invisible Recruit series, which is where you are. It is a series about 5 women who have, when the series first started out, it was simply a romantic suspense type of story. And the first recruit was a debutante. That was her world. She fit into that world. Her father was the CIA director, former ambassador of France, that very cultivated world. So no one saw her as having anything more to offer.
Mm.
And she applied to be part of a select group of operatives that too many times you, in law enforcement, you can tell who is in law enforcement.
Mm.
They stand
Mhm.
out, kind of like the Crown Victorias. These cars stand out because they all dress alike, they look alike, they have the same mannerisms. So this agency was going to have people who came out of real life and then train them to be in law enforcement. But this way, when they got into trouble, it was always their knowledge about that life, that previous life that they led, that will help them get out, not just their law enforcement training.
So what, she's the first one. What's the background of the other characters?
Well, it was a 5-book series, and she was the first one. The second and the third book were finished, and one was to come out the next month when the publisher pulled that publishing line. And that, for readers, that means that as writers, we have no control over that. They said, these stories, we're not going to sell these kind of stories anymore. So we'll give you your stories back, these 2. I'm not going to give you your first one back, but we'll give you these 2, and you can find someplace else to take them. Except the line was kick-ass heroines. And at that time, they did not have that many options in the traditional publishing world to have those. I, of course, misread the description of that, and I thought it said smart-ass woman, and I thought, I can write that. Yeah, I can do that. So it took a couple of years until I changed the next character, who was a beautician. She was a hairdresser. She comes from Mud Lake, Idaho. And I made her have paranormal abilities. So the series that started as romantic suspense turned into a paranormal group. One is, they each have particular abilities. One can turn invisible. That's the kindergarten teacher. Don't you wish if you were a kindergarten teacher? One was the beautician who, in her first story, has to get out of a nasty situation by using hairspray as a flamethrower. You just light a little match to it, and there it goes. But she can make a bomb out of hair care products. So each of them have these. One is a tarot card reader. She's actually a con artist, but she can see the future. And so each of them have these abilities that they have hidden their whole lives. And they've done these other jobs. So it is in their stories, they come to learn to meld those 2 halves of themselves. Yeah, they accept things that other people have told them their whole lives are not strengths. And it's only because they've been in the wrong situations.
Sounds a little autobiographical, Mary.
Huh. Wishful thinking.
That connects with a question from another reader who asked, and it's a classic about where do our stories come from. What I particularly like, well, then she says she knows an author who dreams her stories, and another who has characters just, taking up residence in her head. But she also says, so how do your beautiful stories come come to be?
Oh, for me, every day there's the what if situations. As a writer, and this goes back to your first question about the difference between civilian and writers, is that writers then take that what if question and play it out. What can give this character the most conflict, the biggest challenge? We look at that. So I am always playing with what if on almost a daily basis. And one of the things I do in my writing in nonfiction and working with writers is I get to plot with hundreds of writers a year on their stories. And so it is always this what if. What is the biggest challenge for this character? How are they going to overcome it? What do they believe that's going to keep them stuck or might allow them to power through regardless? So again, it's that, to me, there's no end to ideas. The difference is what we do as writers with those ideas and how we play them out.
See, you are more adaptable or flexible than I, because once I plotted something with somebody, well, first of all, I would feel possession of it, but also then, I'd want it to play out in a certain way. I don't think I could let go of the idea to let them bring it to life the way they thought it should come.
It is like public speaking. The more you are able to speak in public, the less scary it is. And for me, the more I've been able to plot with others, the easier it is to step back and see what is it about that story that drives them as a writer to writing that story. The one challenge I find periodically is when a writer has a dream. It is a fantasy. It is not a story. And you find that regardless of what type of genre or subgenre someone is writing. But I find it with romance writers, for example, when they have a fantasy of the perfect male. So their story tends to involve this male coming in and solving all the female's problems. And there's no reason for that female not to get together with him because, good God, don't we all wish, cross between Mr. Ajax and Prince William with his fortune coming in. So those type of plots can be problematic because when it is just a fantasy, just a feel good, this is what I want, wish I felt, those kind of stories don't change because they're not really stories.
They're a scenario or a situation. Yeah.
Exactly.
So I've got to ask this because it hooks into, this is a reader question, and I usually ask it later, but I want to ask it now. If you could write a book with any author, alive or dead, who would you want to work with and why?
Madeleine L'Engle,
Oh,
the young adult writer,
okay.
because she never, ever lowered the expectations that you write the hard subjects for children.
Mm.
And it meant she had a dry streak in the middle of her career. She'd written a couple of books and then this dry streak for 10 plus years.
I never knew that.
And she still kept true to her vision of the kind of stories that she believed in. And she didn't talk down to children. She didn't minimize them. She didn't hide and make everything cleaned up, spiffy, nice in children's stories. And that's actually what blocked her from the publisher expectations of that's not a child's story. These subjects are too hard for children to understand. And it's like, children are the world's realists. And I admire her for that. And there's so much to learn from her writing. And you pick up one of her, A Wrinkle in Time, and you, the Tilting Planet and read them today, and they're just as vital, just as spot on as they were when they were written in the 60s.
But now have you ever wanted to write for children?
Not per se. I used to tell my children stories, and I based those stories on their ancestors. But what I have found is that many times, particularly for women, they would give themselves permission to be a writer by writing children's stories first, before they accepted that it was perfectly okay for them to write a mystery or a horror story, or there's nothing like having a bunch of kids to want to write a horror story. I found it utterly fascinating that women would give themselves permission. As long as they were writing for their children, it was okay to learn how to write.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah, it was just really kind of like, and, don't really kick me out of the sandbox for this, but it's like people would go into other elements. It's shadow writing. Journalism is one of them, but also being a lawyer, anything that you're writing a lot, but you're not giving yourself permission to write that novel.
One of my things I'm really interested in and talk to a lot of people about is whether people who end up being writers early in their life changed the endings of stories. They were exposed to stories, whether through movies or books, and they didn't like the ending. And so they either mentally or actually rewrote endings. And there's a fairly wide streak of that happening among people who become authors. I wonder if there's an element of that with women who are consuming children's stories as they're telling them to their kids, reading them to their kids. And there's some element of, I could do this. I can do this better. I know this story should be this way.
Right. The story should be this way. And that segues nicely into, well, if I wrote this story, because that's second step usually, not the first, they get to that step and it's like, well, maybe I could, because for one thing, they look and they see it's only 32 pages. How hard could it be? Which is a misnomer because you have fewer words. And it's a lot harder in many ways than writing an adult novel. But it is a pathway that we allow ourselves to take these baby steps into what we really want to write.
I usually ask about a book of yours that is a good entry point for somebody who's never read anything by you. And I would like you to divide it, to give me one of each, of fiction and nonfiction.
Okay. Fiction, I specifically wrote a novella. I think it's called Invisible Recruit, and in the Alex Noziak series. And she's that Mud Lake, Idaho character of mine that was raised with 4 brothers who happen to be werewolves. And she is the only witch. Her mother was a witch, but she abandoned the family when she was 5. So Alex never learned how to use her talents. She had no one to teach her. Her father found a witch at one point to teach her, but it was a Chinese witch.
Cross-cultural witch.
And Alex, yes, exactly. And Alex is half witch, half shaman, because her father is a Shoshone shaman. And so just like other talents, it would be like having a brain surgeon trying to teach a foot doctor, a podiatrist, how to fix a foot. This man might be a brilliant surgeon, but he doesn't necessarily know how to fix a foot. So Alex did not learn how to use her talents. And the novella is short, for one thing, but you get a good flavor of her conflict with herself in her abilities when she has been given an option to join this agency, and she's given a good incentive to join the agency. And so that is, it's like $1.99, I think, or it might even be free. I don't know. It's a good introduction to that particular character. And there's enough books. Like I said, there's 2 or there might be 3 novellas with her leading the novella, as well as 5 books of hers. And if you like paranormal, if you like kick-ass heroines, and if you like,
And also smart-ass heroines?
yeah, go figure. A lot of that, trust me. But that's an easy, inexpensive introduction to that series. And it will give you a sense of the pacing of it. Because these are sit down, hold on, and come up for air when you're done type of stories. So that would be the easiest for her. And the nonfiction, I wrote 3 small nonfiction books about writing setting. Because when I would work with writers, too many times they stumbled with setting. They either put too much setting or not enough. And so I couldn't find any books out there to write. So I created a series of small ebooks, and they address about 3 to 4 topics about setting. So you break it down incrementally to see how to use setting more effectively. And again, the first book in that series, if you sign up for my newsletter, you actually get that book free. So you don't have to follow the newsletter, but it is a way to, again, it's an ebook. Now, those 3 books were so successful because nobody else was teaching setting, that Writer's Digest, the publisher for the preeminent writing craft books, came to me and asked me to write that book for them. So I combined those books, more examples, and came out with a full version of it for Writer's Digest. And I think, but this way is an introduction to it. And you can see that book has been eye-opening for so many writers. And because my philosophy in teaching writers is, it's not about me. It's not about my work. It is, how can you take this information and put it to work in your work as soon as possible? And that gives you a feeling for that. So there's those books. I approach the same thing in writing hooks. The next books I'm going to be doing are on writing body language.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So it's the same type. You get a feel for, is the way this instructor, myself, how she approaches helping others, using a lot of examples from a lot of different genres to show writers how to do it themselves.
Let's get to my very favorite part here. These are the rapid fire either ors.
Okay.
And we'll see how well you play. So the first question is, binge watch or make the watching last as long as possible?
Both.
Oh, you don't play well. Bad girl.
I know I don't. That's why you kicked me out of the sandbox. We have established that fact. Now we know why. Because I will binge watch to a certain point and then I stretch it out so I can start something else to binge watch. But binge watching has so impacted readers' expectation for books and the release of them that it is something that we as authors have to constantly be paying attention to. That even though it can take us several months to write a book, they are going to read these books in the time that we write the next chapter.
Isn't that horrifying? Yeah, the time imbalance, that really, forget trade imbalance. We need to balance the time. But okay, next one, daisies or roses?
Roses.
Opera or show tunes?
Can I have Bollywood in there?
No.
But I want Bollywood.
No. Opera or show tunes?
Can I pick the show at least?
Sure.
Okay, then show tunes.
Hot air balloon or train trip?
What was the second one?
Train trip.
Oh, train trip.
Day or night?
Night.
Paper plates or best china?
Best china.
House decorating or gardening?
Decorating.
Pickup or sports car?
Ooh, sports car.
Hiking boots or cowboy boots?
Do I really have to move in them?
Yeah.
All right, hiking boots.
Okay. Appetizer or dessert?
Appetizer.
Cat or dog?
I only get to pick one. Cat.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Mustard or ketchup?
Mustard.
Winter Olympics or Summer Olympics?
These are actually very hard. Summer.
Sailboat or motorboat?
Sailboat.
Nail polish or bare nails?
Oh, bare nails. Good God.
Spring or fall?
Spring.
Leggings or sweats?
Leggings.
Cruise or trekking vacation?
Trekking. Don't trap me into a cruise ship.
This is the last one. Grab the best first or save the best for last.
Grab the best first. You may not be alive.
On that cheery note.
That's right. And this is why I'm out of the sandbox. The truth comes out.
Now you have to tell the real truth that she's out of the sandbox because she had so many things going on. So she would be welcome back in the sandbox at any point. And it's been a delight talking with you, Mary. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us on this edition of Authors Love Readers podcast.
Well, thank you, Pat. And thank you to the readers who are listening too, because if it weren't for you, there would be no writers. So you are the reason we write, and we do value you.
Yeah, it always catches my heart when people say, oh, I'm only a reader. And I think there is no only about it. You make us, basically. So, on that note, we will say to all the listeners, have a great week of happy reading. That's the show for this week. Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for joining Authors Love Readers podcast. Remember, you can always find out more about our guest authors in the show notes, and you can find out more about me at www.patriciamclinn.com. You can also send in questions to be asked of future authors at podcast@authorslovereaders.com. Until next week, wishing you lots of happy reading. Bye.